signals coming from a canyon. I've been searching for my companion for so long. Look out, here comes the dawn. Look to my left, look to my right, searching for something, but something ain't right. This glass and full, it's fucking empty. Cowboys and Indians, I'll be the cowboy, you be the Indian. I'll shoot my rifle, you shoot your arrows of love. Struck once, twice, three times a charm. Beautiful woman with a deadly arm. If love weren't a game, I'd be dead forever. Cowboys and Indians, let's play cowboys and Indians, let's play all night long. Smoke signals coming from the canyon. I've been searching for my companion for so long. Look out, here comes the dawn. Cowboys and Indians, I'll be the cowboy, you'll be the Indian. Tie each other up while we tie one. Oh, oh. 1, 2, 3, 4.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody. All right. So we should be on, and you should have no problem seeing us here. I realize that there's it looks like an internet connection, a little bit of difficulty there. So if you don't see me directly, I apologize. But we're having a great show, and I think it's going to be a great show. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to have a guest on very shortly, and that will be Dr. Nathanson, Dr. Paul Nathanson, who is the author of Spreading Misandry. He's been around for quite some time. He's had quite a few speeches in 2013. He's been a guest speaker. He was recently on Laura Ingram's podcast on March 29th of this year. So he's very public. He's gotten several books, and I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. We'll be talking about what's going on in the 2020 election, some of the Democratic nominees and hopefuls and where they are, the apologies that they've been making. How is this influencing America? How is this reflecting world issues? There's going to be a lot about that. So I'm going to look forward to that. I do also want to mention, and this is a new announcement, it is confirmed I will be speaking at the Liberty Weekend, which will be in Binghamton, New York at the Binghamton University. I've been invited by the Binghamton University College Libertarians and the Binghamton University College Republicans. They're having a joint event on April 25th and 28th. I will be the featured speaker on April 28th at 2 p.m. And I'll be talking about the Second Amendment, red flag legislation, the impact of the new laws in New York State and across the country. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. I think that's going to be really great. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. And I think it's going to be quite an event. It's going to be open to the public. And by the way, if you notice the other advertising there, this is not paid by anyone. I'm just mentioning that the Belmar Pub are friends of mine. I enjoy their food, and it's a great location. If you ever pass by, please do check it out. I also am mentioning that the Park Diner, also friends of mine, great food. I enjoy going there, and so that's why you saw that on the screen. But again, the Liberty Weekend will be a great event. I'm looking forward to it. I've just confirmed that I will be there on April 28th at 2 p.m. It is open to the public. It is a free event. It is open to the public, and I invite the media as well as the public to come on by and check it out. There will be a question and answer period after the event, after I speak. So it'll be really fun. I'm looking forward to everyone coming with their questions and whatever I can do on that. Now, getting into the show and getting ready for everything, one of the things I do want to talk about, of course, is Candace Owens. And I think there have been over 4.4 million people who have watched her as she defended herself from the attack, the really horrible attack by, it was Congressman Lieu, who had misquoted her, took her out of context, and had tried to smear her name and her appearance on a event dealing with the issue of basically, they're trying to talk about the discrepancy, race relations in the nation, and what could be done about it. And the first thing to be done about it, according to Candace Owens, is, get the Democrats out of the issue. Now, Democrats have come out and they've tried to defend themselves. They've attacked Ms. Owens on several points, trying to point out that nationalism is a bad thing. Being proud of your nation is not good. I disagree with this. And you can ask most people who've joined the military, I would imagine, and you'll get the same answer. Nationalism isn't inherently bad. Now, there is something very bad about individuals who are extremists, individuals who are looking to, whether you're talking about white nationalism, oops, sorry about that, whether you're talking about white nationalism, you're talking about neo-Nazis, that kind of thing. Obviously, that is a problem. But if we're just talking about people who are proud of being Americans, patriotic, members of the military, members who've served in government, whether it's local or national, why is that a bad thing? That's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. And we should be proud of that. We should be happy about that. We should be celebrating that. But that's not what we're hearing. And I do believe that Candace Owens is correct that we have a big problem in our nation right now, and that problem isn't coming from anybody but the Democratic Party, the Democratic Socialists of the Democratic Party, the progressive movement. And every time I've looked at the progressive movement, the far left movement, I see something that's very troubling. There's nothing that's really positive that's going on there. Look for something that tells you that they've done well. I mean, they've told us that we should be more separated, we should be more individualized, we should be following them, but we shouldn't be proud of our nation. We shouldn't be proud of being individuals. That's not the message they put out there. You should be part of a group. You should be part of their group. You should follow their lead. Because if you are black, well, you're part of the black group. You're part of that micro category. You're not an individual. You don't get to have a choice about it. If you're a woman or you're gay or you're transgender, you get to be part of that micro category. You don't get to be an individual, and you have to align yourself with the micro category, that group that they've created, and you only fit in if you follow what they have described as the right path for those people. And that's kind of, well, it's racist, it's sexist, it's about every ist you can think of. It is a bad thing. How dare you to limit people? And that's what we're hearing from the Democratic Party. Listen to them. They're talking about gender and identity politics. They're talking about you have to apologize if you're the wrong race or you have the wrong points of view. We've heard Senator Kirsten Gillibrand have to come out and explain, finally, why she's reversed her position on immigration policy. Because she used to be a very strong proponent of walls, like most of the Democrats going back in the Obama era. Even President Obama, they were aware that there was a crisis at our border. They were aware that we needed a border wall. They were proponents of this. Now, they're not. And they need to explain themselves. And they're apologizing because, they had the wrong idea. No, they didn't. They had the right idea. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a nation defining its borders. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a nation saying that they believe in defending those borders and upholding the rule of law. But that's not what we're hearing from them today, it should be troubling for a lot of people. I know it's troubling for me. We've heard some of the Democratic hopefuls like Robert O'Rourke, otherwise known as Beto O'Rourke, who are pretending to be other races. Beto O'Rourke is not a Hispanic, but yet he pretends to be when he goes for elections. Elizabeth Warren pretends to be a American Indian, but she's not, and then has proven that as she's 1024th American Indian, which means she's about as American Indian as I happen to be Samoan. It's just not, whether it exists or not is immaterial. It's irrelevant. And I'm sure there's more than 6 degrees of separation there. It's not a realistic thing. But yet she's claimed that. She's gotten jobs on that. She's made money. She's improved her position in life on a lie that she has maintained for long term. There's Ms. Dolans who has done this. We have seen, mind you, you haven't seen a Republican, as far as I can recall in 51 years of my life, I can't recall a Republican that has gone out and said, hey, I'm some other race. I'm some other type of person. I'm lying to the public about who I really am. I'm not aware of that happening. But we hear that with the Democrats a lot, especially in the 2020 election, where they're trying to promote themselves to fit into these boxes of gender and identity. And that's why we've seen Beto O'Rourke, the fake Hispanic who's going out there and he's trying to fit into the Hispanic box and to get those votes and to get that support. We've seen, Elizabeth Warren, as I mentioned, about the American Indian trying to get that vote, to get the sympathy of minorities so that they can have any kind of viable position against the other 33 candidates in the Democratic race. It's kind of sad. And they're making every promise in the world, as they always do, and yet we never see anything. And Candace Owens brought that up, and I thought it was very important. And if you haven't seen her speak, please do take a moment to listen to her opening statement, as well as her response to Congressman Lieu when he made his attack on her, and didn't give her a chance to respond to his attack. That's the important thing. He attacked her and then purposefully did not give her a chance to respond to his out of context, obvious personal attack. And that's sad. And she's right. It's a very sad statement about where we are today when an attack can be made and not allowed to be responded to. That's the Democratic Party at this moment. And I'm really, really scared about this. You have to apologize for being born the wrong color. Imagine if someone said you have to apologize for being black or Hispanic, or you have to apologize for being a woman. Would anyone agree with that? For every single one of the Democrats that are saying, and political leaders of Tomorrow Plot or Citizen Action or Black Lives Matters, if you ever asked them, would you apologize for being born a person of color or being born a male or a female? Ask them that. And they'll tell you, no, there's absolutely no reason why they should be. They're proud to be what they are. Then why does anyone else have to apologize? Why should anyone apologize for being born? And this is some of the questions I'm going to be bringing up with, of course, our guest, Dr. Paul Nathanson. But I want to ask you that too. I mean, this is a question we really need to address in this nation. If this is what our politics are about, if this is what the 2020 election is going to be about, we really have to ask this. And if we're going to see tactics like we saw with in our hearings in Congress, where we're seeing character assassination and false claims and mischaracterization of individuals to promote a political agenda without regard to the truth, facts, or the proper context of what's being said, how can we trust our government? And that's the problem I see. One of the big problems. The way that Democrats are looking at the 2020 election divides our nation, separates individuals, and it creates a lack of confidence in our government, which disincentivizes people to be involved in the election, which means fewer people vote, which then makes it easier to manipulate. And that's a problem. And there's your process. There's the steps. If I don't know, maybe this is what Democrats are looking to do. The more they turn off people by being dishonest and blatantly dishonest and blatantly sexist, blatantly racist, blatantly dividing people and separating people and having people angry and telling them that their vote doesn't count as an individual, but as a block they might count. And in pushing that theme, you're pushing people away from voting, from being involved in the political process, which means there are far fewer people to control and manipulate and or convince to be on your side, and therefore they can maintain more power. We see that in New York State. And that's one of the reasons why New York State is now a single-party state, much to the detriment of most of the people in New York State, which is why we're seeing people leave New York State. We saw the same thing in California. As these states are going more and more progressive, more and more people are leaving. The middle class, we're not talking about just the rich, the middle class, the working class. People are leaving because they can't afford the taxes. They can't afford the lack of freedom that is easily and readily available just across the state line. Why live in a state that is more interested in providing benefits, taxpayer money, taxpayer dollars spent as a benefit to illegal aliens that will not be given to American citizens. I mean, that says something right there. And I'm referring right there to the New York State law, spending in the budget, to provide DACA, kids who are illegal, to be able to go to college for free and not other American citizens. That's a problem. That is a problem. How dare they say that? How dare they do that? It just doesn't make sense. And this is, again, an example of what we're seeing overall. This is an example of what we're seeing as the problem in the system right now. That Democrats are looking to divide and separate and isolate individuals, but they're not unifying anyone. And they're making lots of promises, as they always do, but they're not trying to live up to any of those promises. Remember when President Obama in 2008, and I remember this because I covered the election, and one of the big questions was, one of the big promises was that President Obama promised he was going to make immigration his number one issue, that he was going to go out there and make immigration reform a reality, that he was going to go out and help to change the law if only people would vote for Democrats in the House and for the presidency. And he got it. He got it. There was a supermajority. The Democrats could pass anything they wanted, no matter how much the Republicans would complain in 2008. And did he do anything about immigration? No. Any of the issues that Democrats were looking for, did they pass anything? No, the only thing they did was Obamacare. And so, one moment, folks. Hello? Hi, Paul. Hold on one second. We're just live. I'm going to get you on in just a moment. Hold on, please. All right. And so, folks, that's my guest, Dr. Paul Nathanson. He's going to be speaking with us in just a moment. Surprised me. He's right on time. So we're going to take a very, very quick break, and then we'll be right back with our guest, Dr. Paul Nathanson. All right, everybody. Again, I just wanted to mention we're going to be coming on. I will be at the Liberty Weekend event on April 28th at 2 p.m. You are invited to that. And I do want to start off. We're going to be speaking with our guest, Dr. Paul Nathanson. He called in right on time. Surprised me. No one ever calls in right on time, so it's perfect. And we're going to be speaking with him now. Dr. Paul Nathanson is a professor of religious studies. He's a Canadian, and he's also author of the book Spreading Misandry. Actually, it's several books. This is one of his leading books out there. And Ken, and you can hear us fine, correct, Doctor?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, but I can't hear you.
You hear me weak?
Well, it's almost inaudible.
Ooh. Okay, bear with me. It shouldn't be that bad. How is that? Is that a little better for you now?
Slightly, but not enough.
Ooh. Usually we can be pretty good. How's that?
No, it's not really good. Let's just try it anyway.
Okay. Because I apologize for that. Usually comes in a little bit better than that. But Doctor, the reason why we have you on today and what we wanted to speak about with you is looking at the 2020 presidential race here in the United States. And we've been seeing many of the candidates on an apology tour. We've seen them make apologies about their race, about their gender, and the identity politics that has captured the Democratic Party. What is that, based on your readings, your work, what do you think of that?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Sure. Based on your outlook and your research, what do you think of the 2020 presidential race and the identity politics in it?
Well, identity politics is clearly going to be around for a while. It's had at least 40 or 50 years of germination, and now it's really gone viral. I'm not a politician, and I'm not even an American. I'm sitting here in Canada watching what's going on. I think that many of the candidates on the Democratic side seem to be very, very focused on identity politics, especially the feminist version of identity politics. And even Biden, who is, getting hell for his making women feel uncomfortable. He was an architect of the Violence Against Women Act, which in itself is not such a bad thing, but it deliberately excluded any discussion of violence against men, which is also very common. And I think I consider him as one of the front runners, even though he hasn't actually declared that he's a candidate. That's very disturbing.
It is. It's something that I think is endemic, and we've seen this to a certain extent in the C-16 bill, made popular and very world famous by Jordan Peterson, as well as your work as well, that we're seeing a movement towards isolationism, of sexism and approved sexism based on people's gender, whether it's transgender or male or female. There are priorities and hierarchies, and I think that's a dangerous thing. How do you feel about that? How does that strike you?
Sorry, what's the question?
Yes. Looking at the identity politics
Yes.
that have been infiltrating, say with the C-16 bill, as spoken about by Jordan Peterson and yourself, how do you see this influencing the future for both Canada and America?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, and the future has a tendency to confound predictions because so many things can change very quickly. But if things continue the way they are, I would say that we're going to have an increasingly fragmented society, and even worse, a very polarized society, where people are no longer individuals but simply representatives of various classes which are in inherent conflict with each other. So there'd be a sharp increase in cynicism. I mean, cynicism is already prevalent. If you listen to the utterings of candidates and journalists, you find an increasing tendency to ascribe the worst possible motives to anybody who doesn't agree with you. Now that's cynicism. That's a very dangerous factor in the life of any democratic society.
Yeah, it's one of the things that can truly destroy it. You're mentioning some of the people in media. I know that on April 9th, Newsweek had an interview with Cecile Richards, and she suggested that misogyny is the leading factor of, in our case, the Republican Party, but in many governments. How do you respond to people who say, no, it's not that it's misandry or against men, but that there is a movement against women and that misogyny? Did you
Sorry,
hear?
what's the question?
Yes. There are many people in media who are saying that misogyny is a tool of government at this time. And how do you feel? Because you make the case of misandry being active. How do you address that?
Well, I think that both misogyny and misandry, they're both forms of sexism, and they coexist. I mean, it's not as if one exists and the other cannot exist. They're two sides of the same coin, and it's worse than that because they're two sides of the coin of basically hatred. Now, hatred can be directed against anybody, not only another sex, but another race, another language, another nationality. So I think that we're all marinating basically in hatred, and the particular form that it takes is, I wouldn't say it's by chance, but it's the main problem is that we need to address is how do we move away from hatred, regardless of the form it takes? Because, it's contagious. Hatred is contagious. You can't confine it to one group. The same people who express hatred of one group will sooner or later express it toward many other groups.
I agree. There is no difference when you categorize any person or any individual. You always wind up creating that's always a window for the next group to be hated against, and it devolves to the worst type of government. In many of your books, you address how these separations are harming our future. And let me ask you, what brought you to realize this? How did you come about understanding this?
Well, you're talking about my personal background. I can talk
Yes.
about that if that's what you're interested in.
Yes.
I am gay, and I grew up not really understanding what the meaning of manhood might be. So I had to find my own way. But I suffered a lot from bullies. I got a lot of ridicule, a lot of bullying. So the question of gender was in my mind even when Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique in the early 1960s. And at that time I thought, oh, well, that's a breakthrough. If women can challenge gender stereotypes, then so can I. But, you know, after 5 or 6 years, feminism, the egalitarian feminism that Betty Friedan originated, was morphing into something inegalitarian. It was something ideological. And it happened around the same time that the civil rights movement began morphing into the Black Power movement and the further development of identity politics in general. So I had to question feminism because I was reading things that were really filled with something that I couldn't distinguish from hatred. So ever since then, I've come to see that feminism, whatever its origin, whatever its contributions, has a fatal flaw at this point. And that is that it cannot seem to get itself away from the tide of hatred. I'm sorry to have to say that. I don't want to say that.
No, it's important. We can't improve things if we can't identify what's going wrong, what's bad. I think you would agree with that.
But I will add one thing, that in the past few years, there have been more than a few women who have begun writing critiques of feminist ideology. And that is one encouraging sign. It's no longer inevitable that women see feminism in terms of its opposition to men. So that's a helpful sign. Let it be said. Let everybody know that not all women, not all feminists even, are in the hate-filled camp. But they have to work hard, because feminism, after so many years, has become institutionalized in law, in education, in almost every field. And so the traces of misandry have to be carefully noted and monitored and questioned, just as women had to do the same thing about misogyny 50 years ago.
Yeah. Let me ask you, looking at the modern feminist movement, especially here in the United States, and the gender identity politics that surrounds it, is there any justification for people apologizing for the way they are born, whether that's gay, black, white, whatever? Is there any justification that you have heard of that makes it worthwhile?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question.
Sure. Is there any, in your experience and studies, is there any justification for demanding that people apologize for being born the way they are?
Is there any justification for
Being born the way you are? Anyone?
For being born?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Justification for being born?
Right. Currently, American politics demands people apologize.
Apologies. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I'm very, I would say, suspicious about apologies because they're so well, for many reasons. First of all, they're simply political gimmicks very often, and politicians don't necessarily speak for anyone except themselves. The president can apologize for all sorts of things, but that doesn't necessarily say anything about the people of the country. And secondly, and even more serious, it's one thing to apologize and make amends to people that have actually been harmed, which was the case in Germany, for example, after the war. The German government went out of its way, did everything except resurrect the dead in their attempt to make amends to Jews for the persecution under the Nazi regime. But in the case of reparations and apologies to, black people whose ancestors had been slaves or Indian groups, I mean, those people are no longer around. We're talking about their descendants many generations later. And the people who did those oppressive things also are no longer around. So it cannot really, an apology cannot, it's an abstraction. It's not, somehow it's morally suspect, in my opinion. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's not that it's a good thing to acknowledge that history has been disastrous for some groups. That's a good thing. We need to know what happened in history, and we need to not make the same mistakes again. But to imagine that an apology can solve that problem is really silly.
No, I agree with you. I think the same thing. Let me ask you, and I know we're running out of time a little bit, but we have some time left. Looking at in Canada, from your knowledge, as people are looking at the 2020 presidential race here in America and the issues from the Democratic Party and all the candidates, what's the impression? What are Canadians thinking about all of this?
Try once more with the question.
Sure. What is Canada thinking about the Democratic nominees for president? What are you guys thinking about this?
I think that this is just an impression. I mean, I'm not speaking here as somebody who's conducted any kind of survey.
Okay.
My impression is that Canadians are generally more favorable to the Democrats than to the Republicans, although there are parts of Canada that are the opposite. But I think many Canadians really look at what's going on as some kind of a sideshow. Things that are happening, the things that people say are becoming so extreme that it's hard to take seriously. However, having said that, I should just add that Canada has shenanigans of its own going on. I mean, we have a prime minister who bills himself as a feminist and certainly has gone out of his way to prove his credentials as a feminist, although he's basically, I think, an ignorant do-gooder. But even he gets in trouble because he made sure that his cabinet consisted of 50% women, even though
what happened?
By no means the most qualified. But he recently had to fire one of them, who was not only a woman but an Aboriginal woman, and therefore had a very high status according to the intersectionalist ideology. And suddenly people were saying, well, should we support this person who got involved in a scandal and had to fire a woman, or is he doing women more good? So it's the same kind of thing that people had to ask in the States during the impeachment of Bill Clinton, for example.
Right.
It's a question of, what side of the bread what side is your bread buttered on?
Yeah. Politics.
Does it make political sense to go one way or the other?
No, absolutely. And the politics nowadays are very guided by that, how can I say, that kind of calculation rather than the serious ideology or convictions of the people. It's more poll driven. I know we've had some difficulty with this call. I apologize. It's normally far better. It may be because we're calling into Canada. Let me ask you, is there anything that you wanted to mention to my audience before we end the call? Any thought that you had that you wanted to share with us here in the United States?
Well, basically, what I want to say is that the only way out of this mess, and I won't live to see this happen, but the only way to ultimately to get away from polarization is that men and women, and also other groups in conflict, have got to begin to take each other seriously as people. It's what I call intersexual dialogue, which is based on the model of interreligious dialogue. And dialogue is not just another euphemism for national debate or national conversation or whatever they say. It's a kind of conversation in which is based on empathy and the willingness to see the other as the other sees him or herself, not the way you think they are. So this is what I'm working on now. I've outlined 10 principles that everybody would have to agree on. It's basically it's like a constitution for a new society. And it's, as I say, it's based on empathy and listening and taking seriously the other, not only yourself, not only being defensive, but trying to see the needs and problems of the other. Now, men have to do that with women, and women have to do the same thing with men.
Having a fair, open conversation. An open dialogue.
That's right.
No, I think you're right. I think that is what's needed. We certainly need something different than this intersectional ideology. I agree with you on that, absolutely. But I do want to thank you, Doctor, for taking the time to speak with us here in the United States, to share your thoughts and some of the things that you're doing. Is there a title to your new book, or is the 10 principles part of a book you're writing, or that you already wrote?
Well, my co-author, Catherine Young, and I have written 4 books. One is called Spreading Misandry, which is about misandry in popular culture. The second book is called Legalizing Misandry, which is about the way misandry has become institutionalized in the law. The next one is called Sanctifying Misandry, in which we talk about the ways in which organized religions have been influenced by feminist ideology. And the most recent one is called Replacing Misandry, and that's, I think, the most interesting one in a way, because it's called, the subtitle is A Revolutionary History of Men. And that means looking at the history of men for the past 12,000 years since the agricultural revolution, and seeing it as a series of cultural and technological revolutions that have affected our way of perceiving men and their ability to contribute to society. Now, my basic point here is that for anyone, either a group or an individual, to have a healthy identity is by necessity. It means to be able to make at least one contribution to society that is A, distinctive, and B, necessary, and 3, publicly valued. If you cannot make any contribution like that, then you cannot have a healthy identity. And if you can't have a healthy identity, then frankly, there's all hell breaks loose, and we all know what what happens when that occurs.
Oh, yes.
We've got very, very much higher rates of suicide and school dropouts among men. This is a danger sign. This is no victory for women.
No, it's not a victory for anyone. I agree. But I hope that my audience gets a chance to look into your books and see more of your writing, and I will link to that in the description of our conversation. And I do want to thank you again for reaching out to us from Canada here in the United States to speak with my audience. And I hope that you're going to have a great day, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you're doing very soon.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And all right, folks. So that was our guest, Dr. Nathanson, Dr. Paul Nathanson. Quite an interesting individual and quite an interesting conversation. And I apologize if it was the long distance calling into Canada. It came off a little bit weaker than we had expected, and I apologize for that. That's unusual. But I think it's very clear that the concern, and this is not a concern just amongst Canadians. It's not a concern just amongst the radical anybody. It's a common concern. I mean, look at the jokes that are being made by Trevor Noah. Now, I don't watch him anymore. I don't watch The Daily Show. He's far too political for me. But even he can't help but notice that the Democrats' apology tour has been detrimental, that it's so extreme that it deters and takes away from the public. And we see that, it's not helping the Democrats in any way. When we look at the 2020 presidential candidates, and I know predicted isn't the big official way of ranking anybody. It's still way, way too early at this point for us to get a realistic poll or a real idea of who's going to be leading in the Democratic nomination for 2020. But we do get a very clear understanding of where the trend is going, what is generally working for the Democratic Party, the bigger themes. And when we look at it, you look at Bernie Sanders, we know what his theme is. It's socialism. That's a big trending thing for Democrats, socialism. But then you look at Joe Biden, and even with his issues, having to go out there and apologize for being who he is, for being white, for being handsy, and the accusations that have come out against him, he's still a leader. But then everything fractures after that. All of a sudden you get candidates like Pete Buttigieg, who is really basically unknown and is trading off of his personal sexual preferences. We get Kamala Harris, who is a gender identity politics candidate and is trading off of that. We have the fake Hispanic Beto O'Rourke. We have Andrew Yang, who's promised to give away money, and that's his big thing, is he's going to pay people. Where this money comes from, no one knows, but he wants to just pay trillions of dollars to the American people if they qualify. Elizabeth Warren, the fake Indian. We have Cory Booker, who with his sexual assaults well documented by himself in his own book. And then it just gets really weak and fractured from there. And this isn't even the full list of all of the people who are theoretically running for the presidential nomination on the Democratic Party. So it's quite interesting when we look at this, when we consider these people, when we think about what they're doing and what they're saying. it comes across as just being so, I don't even know what the word is. I don't know how to properly describe it. It's just beyond. They're so fractured. They're so categorized. And I don't think that, and I think when we look at the popularity of this, it doesn't reflect anyone who's actually leading. We have that disenfranchisement. And it's just, I don't think it's a good thing for the nation. I don't think it's a good thing for American politics. I think it's more divisive than it is unifying. And I think most people agree with that. But you may not. You may disagree with myself. You may disagree with our guest, Dr. Paul Nathanson. You may want to have comments of your own. We're always open to hear your thoughts, your comments, and your ideas about where is this nation going forward. You know, if you think identity politics is positive, please let us know. Matter of fact, our shows are on every Tuesday, every Thursday at 1 p.m. On Saturday from 12 noon until 2 p.m. we're on, and we focus on your comments. And it's a great time to call in, to speak with us, and tell us, you know, anything that we've covered, any of the guests, any of the commentary, any of the breaking news, to introduce your thoughts and say, hey, I think you got it wrong on this. Maybe you didn't understand this, and you have your idea and you want to share it with us. Please do. You can reach us with Twitter. I'm at the MV Consult on Twitter and always available there. You can always email us at info@vassconsult.com. And that's VASS consult.com. And we're always happy to look at your emails there. You can reach us on Facebook at the Voss Political Commentary page on Facebook. And we're always available, and you'll see links to all of our interviews, which are done as a podcast, as well as video, as well as many articles that we've done. And you'll be able to see all that information there and be part of it. We invite you to that. I also want to, again, mention that on April 28th, I will be speaking at Binghamton University at 2 p.m. It is open to the public. It is open to the media. And this is sponsored by the Binghamton University College Libertarians and the Binghamton University College Republicans. I'll be speaking about it more in depth as we go forward. But finally, in the last few moments here, I do want to say that if you haven't, please check us out on YouTube, and you'll be able to see some of our extra programs that we've done. You can see our videos. Please do subscribe. Always add your comments. We're always happy to see that. We look forward to it. And until the very next time, I want to say to everyone, I thank you. I hope you're going to be well. And check us out and all of the guests at the Exceptional Conservative Network. Everyone be well. I'll talk to you soon.